What happens when a lighthearted late-night interview transforms into one of the most uncomfortable moments in television history? Tonight, we're breaking down the explosive exchange between Mila Kunis and Jimmy Fallon that nobody saw coming. An exchange so intense it ended with security escorting one of Hollywood's biggest stars off the set. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below telling us what you think really happened that night. The Tonight Show stage was set like any other evening. The audience buzzed with anticipation as Jimmy Fallon wrapped up his opening monologue, landing laughs with his familiar mix of impressions and self-deprecating humor. The band faded out, the applause swelled, and Jimmy leaned toward the camera with a grin. When he introduced Mila Kunis, the reaction was instant. The crowd erupted as she walked out in a sleek black dress, waving confidently, flashing the signature smile audiences had known for years. Jimmy greeted her with his usual enthusiasm, a hug, a handshake, a quick joke, as she settled into the guest chair. "Thank you so much for being here. You look amazing," Jimmy said, clapping along with the audience. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy," Mila replied casually, adjusting her posture. The energy felt normal, relaxed, friendly. Nothing hinted at what was about to unfold. Jimmy eased into the interview, talking about her latest project. He praised the trailer, the buzz around it, and then casually dropped what sounded like a harmless behind-the-scenes question. He mentioned hearing that Mila had insisted on doing all her own stunts and that it caused tension with the director, particularly over a risky rooftop scene. As he spoke, Mila's smile tightened, not dramatically, but enough to signal something had shifted. "I wouldn't say I insisted," she said carefully. "That sounds like an exaggeration." Jimmy leaned forward, laughing lightly, pushing on. He said he'd read about a heated argument between her and the director, something that had supposedly become industry gossip. "Where exactly did you read that?" Mila asked. Her tone was calm, but sharper now. Jimmy hesitated, shrugging it off. He mentioned one of the trades, maybe Variety, admitting he couldn't remember exactly. The audience laughed, assuming this was playful back and forth. Mila nodded slowly. "So you're presenting something you can't even source as fact on national television?" The laughter turned nervous. Jimmy's smile flickered, then returned, but the mood had clearly changed. What was supposed to be light banter suddenly felt exposed, fragile, and tense, like everyone in the room sensed. They were standing on the edge of something bigger. Jimmy laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. "Come on, Mila. Nobody thinks that. I'm not trying to paint you in a bad light. I'm just asking what's already out there." His tone was casual, but his eyes flicked briefly toward the audience, searching for reassurance. "But that's exactly the problem," Mila replied, leaning forward. "You're repeating something that's out there, without checking if it's true. And now people watching at home are going to assume I'm difficult, that I fight with directors." The audience chuckled uncertainly, unsure whether this was still part of the show. Jimmy shifted in his chair. Okay, he said quickly. "Let's move on. I can tell this is a sore subject." He glanced down at his cue cards, flipping them faster than usual. "You've been in the industry a long time, started really young. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you hadn't gotten into acting?" Mila stared at him for a beat longer than comfortable. "Are you serious right now?" Jimmy blinked. "What? It's just a question. A harmless one." "It's a lazy one," she said evenly. "You went from unverified gossip to a generic hypothetical because you didn't know where else to go." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jimmy's face flushed slightly. "I think you're being unfair," he replied. "This is how talk shows work. We keep things light." "Light," Mila repeated, letting out a short, humorless laugh. "Because that's what's expected, right? Smile, laugh, tell a cute story, don't push back." "That's not what I'm saying at all," Jimmy protested. "I ask everyone the same kinds of questions." "Do you?" Mila tilted her head. "Because I've watched this show. When men come on, you ask about their craft, their process. When women come on, it's fashion, relationships, and gossip." The audience was silent now, completely locked in. "That is absolutely not true," Jimmy said, his voice rising just a notch. "Did your team verify any of these stories with my publicist before tonight?" Mila asked calmly. Jimmy hesitated. "We do research." "That's not what I asked," she cut in. "Did you verify it? Yes or no?" Jimmy glanced off stage toward his producers. No one stepped in. "Look," he said, forcing a smile. I think we've gotten off track. Why don't we take a quick break and reset? No, Mila said flatly. I don't want to reset. I want to finish this conversation. The smile dropped from Jimmy's face entirely. The tension was no longer subtle. It sat heavy in the room, pressing on everyone watching. I'm not sure what you want from me, Jimmy said. I want you to admit you didn't do your homework, Mila replied. And instead of owning that, you're trying to move on. I'm not going to apologize for doing my job, Jimmy snapped. And that, Mila said, is exactly the problem. The back and forth escalated quickly now, both of them leaning forward, voices overlapping just enough to feel dangerous. Jimmy straightened in his chair, trying to reclaim control. My job is to host a talk show, he said firmly. And part of that is asking questions based on what's in the news, what people are talking about, even when what people are talking about is a lie. Mila shot back. A few gasps came from the audience. Someone in the front row raised their phone higher, clearly recording. Jimmy opened his mouth, then closed it again. I didn't spread rumors, he insisted. I asked a question. A question you didn't fact-check, Mila replied. A question you couldn't even source. If you'd bothered to reach out to my team, they would have told you it was false. Jimmy exhaled sharply and turned toward the camera. We're going to take a commercial break, he said, his voice tighter than usual. Of course you are, Mila said, shaking her head. Run away from the uncomfortable part. I'm not running away from anything. Jimmy snapped, his composure finally cracking. You came on my show and started attacking me in front of my audience. Not fair, Mila repeated. You know what's not fair? Being invited onto a platform and having that platform used to push false narratives about you. Jimmy stood up from behind his desk. The audience gasped. That alone was shocking. Hosts didn't do that. Maybe you should have declined the invitation. If you had such a problem with how I run my show. Mila stood up too, matching his energy. Maybe I should have. But I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time someone would actually want a real conversation. You've turned this into a lecture, Jimmy said bitterly. If the shoe fits, Mila replied. A stunned silence fell over the studio. The band sat frozen, hands hovering over instruments, unsure whether to play. Jimmy pointed toward the wings. Maybe you should just leave. Oh, now you want me to leave? Mila said, incredulous. Because I'm not playing along? I can ask you to leave if you're being hostile, Jimmy argued. Hostile? Mila laughed without humor. I'm being honest. That's not hostility. That's accountability. A producer hurried onto the stage, whispering urgently to Jimmy, but he waved them away. Not now. Maybe you should listen, Mila said quietly. They're probably trying to save you. I don't need saving, Jimmy replied. What I need is for you to either finish this interview professionally or leave. By professional, you mean silent and agreeable, Mila said. She turned to the audience. How many times have you seen guests smile through bad questions, just to keep the peace? No one laughed. No one moved. The room felt suspended, like it was holding its breath. The silence in the studio was suffocating. Mila faced the audience for a moment longer, then turned back to Jimmy. This isn't your house, she said calmly. This is a network studio. I was invited here. You don't get to throw me out because I won't play along. Jimmy's face was red now, a mix of anger and embarrassment. I can ask you to leave if you're disrupting the show. Disrupting? Mila replied. Or exposing something you'd rather keep comfortable? She stepped closer to his desk. You hide behind the word entertainment, like it excuses spreading half-checked stories. This isn't journalism, Jimmy shot back. It's entertainment. And that's the problem, Mila said. You act like that means there's no responsibility. Jimmy ran a hand through his hair, clearly unraveling. You're twisting everything I'm saying. I'm holding up a mirror, Mila answered. You just don't like what you see. The producer returned, more urgent this time, pulling Jimmy aside. They whispered heatedly while the audience watched in stunned silence. When Jimmy turned back, his expression had hardened. Mila, I'm asking you to leave the show. You're kicking me off? She asked, not surprised. You've disrupted the taping, he said. Yes. Asking or telling? Mila replied. Because that difference matters. Jimmy didn't answer. He looked past her and said the word that froze the room. Security. 2 security guards emerged slowly from the wings, clearly uncomfortable. Mila watched them approach, then looked back at Jimmy. This is how you handle being challenged? She asked quietly. You've left me no choice, Jimmy said, staying behind his desk like it was a shield. I came here expecting professionalism, Mila said. When I didn't get it, I spoke up. That's not an attack. That's accountability. One guard spoke softly, asking her to come with them. Mila raised a hand. 1 minute. She turned to Jimmy. This isn't about me being difficult. It's about a pattern where speaking up gets labeled as a problem. Jimmy said nothing. Mila looked out at the audience. I'm sorry your night turned into this. But I'm not sorry for telling the truth. A few hesitant claps started. Then more followed, splitting the room. Half applauded. Half sat in shock. As she walked toward the wings, she stopped once more. You'll edit this, she said calmly. And the real issue will get lost. We don't do that, Jimmy muttered, not meeting her eyes. Don't you? Mila replied softly. Security guided her offstage. The guest chair sat empty. The band didn't play. Jimmy stared ahead, then finally cleared his throat. We're going to take a commercial break. The lights dimmed. The audience buzzed. Phones were already uploading clips. What happened next would live far beyond the studio walls.